Yeah, there we go. I am American. I am American. You are American. We are Americans. Folks, today we're going to get into it. Welcome to the Graig Bushon Show. We are going to talk about why this exists. Why is this oath there? Why are we doing this show? What is going on in America and what can I do about it? I'm excited about today because today we're going to get deep into what makes you different from anybody else on the face of the earth, folks. You are an American. You have constitutional rights. You have 27 amendments to that Constitution. You are different. We are different. Okay. And today we're going to discuss, I got Hunter Biden. It's coming down right now. It is breaking news on this Tuesday about what's going on with Hunter Biden and how it looks like he's going to get away with things that we could not get away with. Okay. That's a problem. We're going to discuss the First, the Second, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. We're going to talk about what our founders had to say as well. We're going to pull it up on the screen. So if you're watching this, hey, you can see it. If you're listening to this, then pay attention, folks, because this is going to be a big show. This is a serious issue. We no longer can sit idly by and allow these people that we vote into office in a representative republic to get away with this stuff. And the problem is not enough of us are voting. Not enough of us are paying attention. We have got to get engaged. Okay? These people are right in front of us doing this right in front of us, and they don't care anymore. The roaches used to hide in the dark, and they're not anymore. They're climbing on your couch in your living room as you're trying to eat your popcorn. Okay? Pay attention. We got to pay attention. Here we have it. Welcome, Eric Thompson, you producer extraordinaire. How are you, sir? I'm jacked up today. I'm ready to roll.
I'm there with you. I'm looking forward to this, and it's crucial that we know why our founders decided to take on the most powerful nation in the world, and put their life and their liberty and their wealth and everything up. And then when they won the war, they said, "Now here are the rules to make sure you don't become what we just fought to get away from." And it looks like we're doing it anyway.
Absolutely. Let's pull this up because, folks, just like Eric said, back in the day when we said we want to be free, we do not want tyranny, we don't want to have this tax on tea, which is really about oppression. We will not have our arms taken away. We are not rabble rousers, as King George III said. Take them out. He said, take them out. And you know what? I think that the world has, ever since then, has been trying to take us out. Even though we've done great battles, we've won the revolution, we've had many wars this country has fought for liberty and freedom, not just for this country, but for America and the world. Go ahead, highlight up there, Eric, from July 4th, 1776, and let's heed what they said. Let's pay attention and let's talk about it.
Well, think about it. They're saying this unanimous declaration of the 13 states that when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands from which have connected them with one another and to assume the powers of the earth, a separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature as God entitles them. They said then, okay, well, we hold these truths, King, that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are, and I'm going to insert this, supposed to be instituted by men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter and abolish it and institute a new government. So what I was saying before we started, look at all of these violations the king did that justified them in light of God's law to break off from England. And that's what started this whole movement called the United States of America. But yet,
That's right.
It seems like we're giving it away. I don't understand.
Well, it's because, and highlight that on the screen so people are watching can see exactly what you read. Just highlight it in blue, whatever that is. Oppression is, tyranny is a very, very serious charge, folks. Tyranny is it's one of the main reasons that this country exists today. You had King George III, who wanted to come and take this land, believed that it's his land, and he decided that George Washington had to be taken out, right? And all the people that were behind him. And in the end, they lost, right? And that's a whole other conversation. But the fact is, there's warnings everywhere. We talked about warnings the other day on the show, and we're going to talk about warnings today, okay? Our founders were fighting the most powerful government to ever exist. You have to go back to Rome, okay, and back with the Caesar's days. But in a modern world, they were the most powerful, no doubt about it. And these amendments that they gave us, they didn't just give us a constitution, folks. That wasn't good enough. The Constitution still had too much power centralized within the government. That was the problem with the Federalist Papers. Too much power centralized at the top. So we the people, hence why it's so large on the page, of the Constitution, we the people is gigantic, is to let us know that without the people, the republic can't exist. And we're going to talk about that today, Eric. What do you have pulled up for us? What do you want to start? You tell me. I will let you ask me whatever. You bring me in, pull up the information. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it in real time. I guess we'll start here with the amendments to the Constitution, the first, the second, and the 14th.
Well, I want to ask you a question as we go through the first then. It's Ask Craig question. So,
yes, it is.
The founders, to make after all those violations of the king, and they went to war, and they should have lost, but God's sovereignty, they won. When they wrote the First Amendment, because several members were concerned that there just wasn't enough protections to prevent another king. In the First Amendment, the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging or preventing the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble January 6th for those doing it peaceably, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So my question is, Craig, why, if the Congress is not supposed to make, and they make no laws, why do we live in a country with hundreds of laws violating our First Amendment? What are we supposed to do about it?
Well, the key word is in there is shall. Shall make, no, not should. That's different. You shall not cross the double yellow line on a 2-lane road. You should not means be careful. Shall not says don't do it. Okay. Our founders knew that it's going to be very, very hard for American citizens to grow a country if they don't have protections. All right. Because bad people will get engaged. So you have all these amendments to the Constitution. The First Amendment to the Constitution gives people what? Let's just break it down simply. Freedom of the press, freedom to peacefully congregate, freedom of religion, okay, and freedom of speech, guarded by the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And like you said, Eric, today it feels like, and it's a fact that you have, it's really a two-tier justice system, and you're really starting to see it now, how we've been infiltrated in the United States of America. We have people who have sworn, taken an oath to uphold the law in this country. The Constitution is the main thing, sovereignty, and American rule of law. And they're not doing it. We are sitting in a space right now because the average American citizen has not engaged. It's all going to come back, folks, to we the people. It's always going to come back to we the people. It's going to come back to this. Why does this exist? Why is there an oath for us? Why is there an oath for us as well? You have a candidate oath. You have a citizen oath that's hanging on the wall, and they connect together. Why? Because it's just what we read in the First Amendment to the Constitution. Who's the one? How does that stay intact? It stays intact by the American citizen staying engaged. Benjamin Franklin said, "We have given you a republic if you can keep it." So now you see Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is. And let's pull that up, by the way. Can we do that, Eric? Let's pull up if we have it. Do you have that? What's going on with Hunter Biden? Because that's breaking news. And this will play right into it. Hunter Biden expected to plead guilty to tax-related misdemeanor crimes as part of a plea agreement in Delaware. Well, of course, in Delaware. Yeah, it is his daddy's place, and he's been there for decades and decades and decades. And a simple slap on the hand for something that you and I would have the federal book thrown at us. So that's a two-tiered justice system. All the investigations and all the things that's supposed to have been going on with the Biden, with the laptop from hell, great book if you haven't read it. And instead, what we're sitting here today, and we're having to ingest that Hunter Biden. What are they saying, Eric? He's gonna what? Gonna plead for his misdemeanors and get a slap on the wrist. And what are the charges that he's going to be? Be specific on that. What are they saying?
According to NBC News, it's saying that Hunter is expected to plead guilty to 2 federal, not felony charges. But, he took in money from foreign companies and didn't report the money. He hid the money. So, but unlike you and me, he gets to plea. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, we'll call it a misdemeanor for not paying taxes on that hidden money.
Yeah, and he filled out, his gun registry, to apply to get a gun. And he was
all loaded on drugs.
He did it.
Yep.
That's not a problem either.
Well, they're going to throw that out. They're just going to say, oh, yeah, you did it, but we're not going to pursue that anymore. And we're not going to worry about the millions and billions, tens of millions of dollars you got from overseas. We're just going to say you just didn't pay taxes on it. So since you pay taxes post getting caught, we're going to go ahead and just let you plea out and not do any jail time.
That's right. No investigation.
Nope.
You contrast with what's going on with Trump right now. They're investigating every single thing in his life. And they're charging him with, how many counts? 37 counts, I think, right now.
Yeah.
It'd be so easy to do that with a Biden, Hunter Biden in this case, to hit him from left and right, but they're not going to do it. So what does that do? What does that do to the average American, the person who's watching this show? It makes you feel like it's over. Many people believe that there's nothing left to do. I'm going to buy me a little piece of land, or I'm going to escape, and I'm just going to go live the rest of my life, and the republic is just doomed, and we're just there's nothing I can do about it. A lot of people think that way. A lot of people believe that the Constitution is not working for them. So why is that? Why are people so disengaged? Well, that's the point of this entire show. Everything that we do here is to focus in on what is the power as an American citizen that you have, and what are the things that are tyrannical that are working against us. And what do you have pulled up here, Eric? You've got
14th Amendment, right? So
14th Amendment to the Constitution. Love the 14th. Not an amendment, folks, that is top of mind. No doubt about that. Eric, go ahead and read what you got highlighted.
So let's contrast this to Trump versus Hunter's treatment. So because this dealt with the slaves that were freed and to make sure that they had equal treatment. This 14th Amendment's been abused by the left excessively, but the gist of it is, in Section 1, is that all persons, including the former slaves, born or naturalized in the United States and are subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They're subject to the federal government and the local governments, and then they are considered to be citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. But so based off of that, and for all Americans then, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
Well, there's a couple of things I could pick out of that. First of all, the border crisis, right, under the Biden administration. They've weaponized the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which was, yes, primarily for slaves being able to be naturalized into becoming citizens of the United States of America, which completely agree with. That's a whole other conversation. But it's also you weaponizing that so you have anchor babies, right?
Yep.
That's the term that you hear is anchor babies. What do? They come across the border, they have a baby, now the baby's a citizen. That is the weaponization and a misinterpretation of the Constitution, of the Bill of Rights. It's the same weaponization and the misrepresentation of separation of church and state is why the churches are so weak and they've given up ground and God is dying in the United States of America And it's a very, very dangerous time because the average American doesn't realize what's in the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, all the way through the 27 amendments. They're specific and exact. And then, got to remember, folks, that every lie that you hear is based off of a truth. Any lie of any magnitude, of any value, is based off of a truth, and then they twist it and they manipulate it. Okay? And when you see what's going on in the world today, and you see what the 14th Amendment says, you can easily go, well, wait a minute. That's a problem. I see this thing being trampled on all over the place. But if you don't know what the 14th Amendment is, then you'd have no idea. So when you don't know what you don't know how to defend it. And that's what they want. Because, Eric, what I look at in this is, when you look at a civics lesson, or if you look at deductive reasoning and you look at critical thinking, when you look at this, you have to be able to take the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and filter everything that's going on in this country through it. It's a filtering system that says if it does, it's supposed to weed out, filter out the things that are unconstitutional. And that's why you see a lot of the stuff that's happening today is going to eventually get to the Supreme Court when it comes to, if Trump is held, if they hold him accountable for the lies that they're saying are truths, then it's going to end up at the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, just like it has done many, many times, especially when you go back, let's just say, to the Obama executive orders, he quashed those. The plenary power, this is all connecting here, folks. The plenary power of the President of the United States allows him to do executive orders that become a law, but they also can be tested in the judicial system. And just about every single one that was done by the Obama administration, which is a direct connection to the Biden administration, because it's an ongoing relationship, just so you know. Okay. We have to realize that they were overthrown by the Supreme Court. That's why the power of the Supreme Court is such a big deal, because the interpretation of these amendments, they're the only court that doesn't have to use precedents. So they don't have to look at any other court rulings at all, though they do, but they don't have to. They can say, you know what? We think that that the lower courts, what they have done is absolutely incorrect, and we're not using those precedents at all. Here's what we believe. And that is a powerful position. That's part of the separation of powers. So the protection is built throughout the entire fabric of the United States of America and its founding. The first, the second, the 14th, all 27 amendments, they're all supposed to defend us from a tyrannical government. And Eric, that's not what's happening today. It's just like what you had mentioned. They're now making laws. They're making hundreds, if not thousands of laws that are a death of a thousand cuts, working against your constitutional rights, the ones that shall not be infringed.
Well, think about it. Hillary admitted to crushing her phones, wiping her server clean, her legal server clean, deleting 30,000 plus emails. No charges.
Right.
Biden documents all over his garage, all over Penn University. No charges so far.
And he has no plenary power at all.
And Trump, one state charge already in New York, federal charge in Florida, federal charge coming in Georgia, a state charge, and then another federal charge coming in New York. So where is the due? How is Trump not being denied his due process if the people who did exactly the same crime got away with it?
Well, that's the arrogance that I was talking about. These people believe they have so much power. It is really what Ted Cruz said yesterday on the show. If you go back and look at what Ted Cruz said yesterday, I wish I had that clip right now that showed when he said, you believe basically that you don't have, the FBI does not have to answer not only to the Senate, not only to the House, not to Congress, not even to the American people. That, folks, is exactly what we're talking about. These government agencies have become so powerful, they believe they're immune from taking the inoculation of liberty, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the we the people. And it's because they've the average person's been so disengaged for so long, they've allowed this to metastasize into this huge cancer that we're living with today. So it's not going to be an easy fix, folks. And one of the best ways to deal with this situation is what we're doing with American. And when we come back from break, I'm also going to touch a little bit on the U.S. government has blackmailed database on citizens. Pentagon crawls social media for critical speech. That's a big deal. That's an Epic Times today. There's a lot going on, folks, but there's something you can do about it. We're going to talk a little bit about American, and then we're going to get into other things. And I know that Eric, you've got this formatted where I'm not going to be able to know everything because I don't want to know all. I don't want to know the questions before. I want to know the questions where I got to shoot from the hip, if you will. What do I truly believe about what's going on in the world today? So when we come back, we're going to do that as well. So we'll be back in just a few minutes, folks. This is Craig Bushon, and we'll see you in a moment.
Love made it right. Suddenly I see the light. Now when I'm walking home
If you study history, in particular, just most recently, you look at what happened in Russia, the Russian Revolution, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn teaches us, and history teaches us, the issue of the day was getting rid of God first in order for communism to take over. You go forward a few years later in history with Adolf Hitler. What was the first thing the Third Reich was doing was silencing and getting rid of the church, God, if you will. And now what we're seeing in the United States of America is the exact same thing.
Amen.
Let's get rid of God, because if you can get rid of God, if you can silence and weaken the church, then all of a sudden the satanic plan for globalism to happen around the world has a much better chance.
Sure.
The hope of America is churches filled with people that love Jesus and are being instructed by on-fire pastors.
That's Steve Berger, ASI. We're going to get him on the show. We're going to talk more about that because we live in demonic times, folks. But there is good news. All is not lost, folks. We are not going to lose. We're not. It may feel like it. We might feel like George Washington did, where just everything was not going his way. And then he ends up, through the grace of God and wonderful strategy, winning. But all the chips were down for a long time, and that's the way it feels right now. The chips have been down for a long time. Some of you listening to this show have been unemployed for a long time. Some of you have had to go take jobs. Say you're Uber driving, for example. You're driving Uber, and you're used to being able to pick up 2 or 3 orders at one time and make ends meet, make a decent living. But now with all the illegal aliens that have been coming across the border, because your sovereignty is being breached, because you have officials who are not doing their job, they're breaking their oath of office. Okay, and people have not been able to hold them accountable. People are not united, okay, against that tyranny that's happening. And that Uber driver now is dealing with illegal aliens that are getting driver's licenses in California and going to places like Oklahoma, Missouri, pick the state, North and South Dakota, places where you would think that were what's more bedroom communities and not a lot of illegals would be there. Incorrect. There's a tremendous amount of them, and they're driving Uber. And what is it? That seems like it's not a big deal, but it's a gigantic deal. When your constitutional rights are not upheld, it directly affects you in your pocketbook, It affects you at the doctor's office. It affects you. It affects you on the roadways with people driving around with no auto insurance. It affects you all over the place. The taxes that you pay. It is the slow death of the republic, and that is why we're supposed to have politicians in office that are there to defend the Constitution, defend you and I. Like Steve Berger said, the demonic times are in is because the church has not been doing their jobs. If just the Christians alone, the largest population in the United States of America are the Christians. If you all get together, okay, we can make a huge impact and save the republic. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to do that today on the show with American. I held up this plaque. This is the candidate oath. There's one behind me hanging on the wall that's a citizen oath. And the oath is a gigantic thing. The oath of office is a swear, right? I swear, I solemnly pledge that I will do the things that I say I'm going to do as a candidate, like it says on this plaque, or as a citizen, all right? And we're tying the two together. And it's all based from our founding. It's all based from our faith in God, our faith in America, and the faith in ourselves. And that's the weakest thing right now, folks. The faith in ourselves, the faith of being an American. There's a lot of things happening today to push us to make America not a special place, to make America not a beacon of light. We are being attacked from multiple fronts, and our officials are not protecting us. And then when the corruption is so deep like it is right now within the Department of Justice, within the FBI, within the IRS, that's something to talk about. Up in Montana, there's something to do with, I think, would say the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, for sure the Second Amendment. So there's a lot happening. And it's designed to keep us, in a sense, discombobulated. I can't spell it, but I know the word. And we have to understand that that's the enemy's job, is the great deceiver, is the great liar, the great power on this earth of demonic means is being felt right now tremendously. So what do we do about it? Well, we go to americaican.com. You go to americaican.com. And you scroll down, read the page. It's great. It's inspiring. And it really is to tell us and show us, what we're supposed to be doing in this country. And there's oaths. You need to sign the oath, folks. You need to click on sign the oath and sign it. Understand what it says. It says, I'm an American. I have a job to do. And I swear that I'll do it. So help me God. That's what it says. And the candidate oath is on the same premise. And they expect to be held accountable. That's a powerful connection between you and I and them. Accountability is what's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. Okay? We have got to understand that without a united country, there's no way of winning. It's impossible. And so people are going to be really pissed off about what's going on with Hunter Biden. What can I do about it? Go to americaican.com. As we take this show out there and we meet with some politicians, we're going to get them to sign the oath. And the goal is to get every one of them, but it's not going to happen, folks. They're not going to take the oath. And I suspect too many of them are not going to take the oath. And that's a litmus test. You got to know who's really in your corner. You don't need enemies in your foxhole because we are at war, folks. We're at war externally and we're at war internally. That is why when you take the oath, it's against foreign and domestic as well, right? Because domestically, we're dealing with some very, very big issues. And Eric, this is like what you brought up. Look what's happening with Hunter Biden, but also look what happened. It's going on in Montana right now. I mean, Montana, we don't know all the story yet. This is breaking big yesterday. But on top of that, Epoch Times put out that the U.S. government has blackmailed database on citizens. The Pentagon crawls social media for critical speech, basically censoring, looking to see what they believe is misinformation, and then they want to be able to regulate that. Well, what misinformation? Well, by whose standard? So, Eric, can you pull up? Do we have that on? Here it is.
Well, I'll get that one, but here is the one.
Whoa, that's something interesting.
Yeah. So the State Department actually helped Facebook pick the 11, quote, fact checkers to decide what we should all see online. The government.
Well, doesn't that just make all the sense in the world, folks? You know, the world is upside down, and I'm tired of the blood rushing to my head. Look, Donald Trump is where all this really started unraveling for the enemy. Donald Trump really gave us the break that we needed to see what was going on. Because if Hillary Clinton would have been elected, you would have never seen any of this stuff. And God only knows how far down the road we'd be tyrannically, and how deep the deep state would even. It'd be a black hole. But that's not what happened. Trump was elected. We have the 2024 election coming up. He is going against now his biggest number 2 fight, if you will, is Ron DeSantis. And what are we? A year and a few months away from having to go to the polls and pick the next president of the United States. And many of you folks don't believe that it's going to be fair. Many of you believe that a lot of the illegals that have been let in this country for now decades have the ability to go vote. Many of you believe that stuffing the ballot box has not ended, and it's going to happen again. Many of you believe that I'm not even going to go vote because my vote's not going to count anyway. And that's what they want. So what do? We have to focus in on what makes you and I powerful, what strengths that we have. And those, like we talked about today, this entire show today is the first, the second, a little bit on the fourth and the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and how it is being, how those are being weaponized against us. Now, let's talk a little bit, Eric, about what happened in Montana yesterday, about that gun store owner. I've got an opinion on that, but do we have anything on that, or bring the folks up to date?
Basically, from what I understand, because the articles are all over the place, the IRS was dispatched to a gun owner to go through all of his gun documentation because they didn't believe that he was properly doing his taxes all of a sudden. So they start collecting all this private information on all of his customers. And the senator's like, what are you doing? Well, we're the IRS. We shall do what we need to do. So the IRS is weaponized.
The IRS that had guns, right?
Yeah, they're weaponized. Armed. Yep, they were armed. Right. And so they went up there. They go to a small business in the middle of nowhere, and he gets raided by combat-style IRS agents simply because of his political views. And I believe they're trying to capture all of our gun information, all the information that anyone would have on private citizens' gun ownership.
Well, they would argue that that's theirs anyway, and that's why you have to register, because it's a federal registration, is what it is, folks. And that's, as a constitutional carry guy, I believe that having your name on a list can be dangerous down the road. There's no doubt about that. And so, who passed that information? Who made that legal? Who said that? The shall not be infringed shall actually be infringed, and will pass laws that will infringe on something that Constitution says shall not. Well, that's Congress, folks. That's what it is. It's Congress. Those are the people that you vote into office, or have not voted into office because you haven't voted at all. It doesn't matter what you think and I think about what the enemy is doing if we're not willing to fight against it. And the representative republic that we live in was designed that you and I have to stay engaged. So things like this can't happen. Because here's the thing: the laws that have been passed can also be changed. They can also be removed. They can be shown as unconstitutional. It's not just because there's a law that it's over. No, 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 no. It's designed that we have to filter these laws. That's where we're heading quickly.
But Craig,
And let me draw a parallel line between because we don't know, Eric. We really don't know what's going on with that gun owner, or excuse me, the gun store owner. But we do know that people's private information is being gotten by the IRS. What does the IRS have to do with that? The IRS should have nothing to do with that. That could be an entire. There's a federal agencies for that, but it's not the IRS. So the weaponization of these organizations that are so big now, I think it's 87,000 of them. I thought they were defunded, by the way.
no,
Did I miss something?
they
I thought the House defunded that.
yeah, for a year or two, they're going to try to hold down the cost. But the on the questions I wanted to ask you, this is where there has to be, I believe, come a meeting of the mind through American and what we're doing. I hear people say this, and then I'll ask you. So I hear people say this: well, you can't yell fire in a crowded room, right? Or somebody can't own a tank. So the Second Amendment, yeah, it says shall not, but of course there has to be some type of restrictions. Do you believe that there should be any restrictions or just a general opinion on the right to bear arms?
Well,
that will not be abused by the government.
I want to start with the first part of the question concerning folks. How many times have you heard this? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Really? Well, what if there's a fire in the theater? Well, of course you can, right? There's a fire in the theater right now, folks. And we're being told no smoke here, no fire here. You can't even talk about it. They quash you, right? You can't yell that. So where do they hide everything? It's like the conspiracy theory file. Conspiracy theories, are as a file that a lot of the conspiracies that are true, which we're finding out about now, of course, and it could feel too late. What are one of them? Let's see, Russia collusion. I mean,
COVID.
They're all. What's that?
Any of the COVID arguments?
COVID stuff, Fauci,
Fauci,
getting inoculation,
Ukraine, the whole thing.
Go on and on. Right. It's the government's tracking you. What are the cameras for? And all the street lights. Those are all black helicopter stuff, right? No, we're finding out that these people who have gotten into power, like a Fauci, okay, for example, they live off of taking advantage of bad education for people. Hey, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can if there's a fire. So they got to finish that, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. Okay, so we're sitting in a world right now that it goes back to a strong lie is based off of truth, and then they twist and manipulate it. What's the second part of that question?
Well, my question is, if the Congress shall make
no
law, then
yes.
Should there be any restrictions on speech? Because if you say, I mean, the argument is, and I'll get your opinion, but the argument is, if you give an inch, they take it a mile. So is Pandora's box opened if there's one law allowed to be in place that restricts speech?
Well, freedom of speech, and I think you also asked about the Second Amendment with
we'll get to that,
right to bear arms.
So for example, the argument on Second Amendment is, well, like Biden says when he's mumbling, well, you can't have a bazooka, so of course you have to have restrictions on the Second Amendment. Well, once you give corrupt people that we allow to get into office the ability to then take that opening, then the next thing you know, we're dealing with the IRS raiding a small store up north in Montana.
Well, let's try to connect the dots. That's what's complex. That's a great question, as a matter of fact. The Second Amendment to the Constitution. Can I have a tank? Can I have a fighter jet? Can I have a nuclear bomb? I don't know. What can I have? Well, I think in a representative republic in the United States of America where it's a voluntary military, and that is why we have to stay a voluntary military. And we have, what's a militia today? A militia is, you could look at National Guards. Okay, states have, their guards within every state has their own militia, if you will. State of Texas, for example, you have the Air Guard, I believe. That is a standing militia. That they have tanks and they have jets and helicopters and weaponry. The key to me is that it resides in the people. It isn't that I need to go down and buy an old Sherman tank and drive it down the road. Is that reasonable? No, I don't think it's reasonable in where you're supposed to live by what's reasonable and prudent. Because it doesn't make sense. I would have the capabilities to have that. But should I have an M4? Absolutely. Should I have a 9mm? Absolutely. Should there be a limit on the magazine size? Absolutely not. Should I be able to have 10,000 rounds, 100,000 rounds? Yes, I should. But the key to this country, folks, and the engagement of the America, that Second Amendment that I believe we have to really understand, is as long as we're a free nation and as long as we have the ability to have our own guard systems in each state and that our federal systems are voluntary only, and then we elect the people to mind the store, we do own tanks. See, our founders really thought this through. I already own thousands of tanks and F-35s and F-22s and F-16s and AR-15s, and I've got tons of weaponry. Why? Because we, the people, own this country. And we're also, as a volunteer, I believe that the military, what would it take for tyranny really to happen? You would have to import a tremendous amount of people who don't love country and really want to take country and import them by the thousands and hundreds of thousands, then the millions that aren't American citizens, and distribute them across the entire globe of America and every state, infiltrate them in and bring them in at an age that's a fighting age. And not monitor them that we can see what's going on, but you could have organizations or the CCP, which had secret police departments in this country, to build sleeper cells. Now, there's your danger. The Second Amendment, to me, is not the argument of me owning a tank. I own thousands of tanks because it's my military. It is not the government's military. And if I let them take it over, it's my fault. It's my fault. If I allow these people, these corrupt human beings, to become generals, and they don't have my best interest, and they want to go woke, and instead of having a powerful killing machine, which is the military, which is connected directly to the Second Amendment, folks. Because the argument is, if the government fails, how do we protect ourselves? That's the real argument. Again, it's not, do I need to own a tank? Because I do. It all circles back to what Benjamin Franklin said. We have given you a republic if you can keep it. Because if we allow this country to keep devolving and we don't get engaged and we don't filter those people that are voted in to represent us, then this is what we get. This is the world that we're living in today. You can see the First, the Second, the 14th, the Fourth Amendment being trampled on. So does that answer the question, Eric, or do I need to explain it a different way? My belief is that I already own tanks.
So the overarching on the first, the fourth, the second, the 14th is, but especially the first and the second, if Congress shall not pass any, if the any becomes, well, a rational person would insert a variable, doesn't it then negate the iron lock prevention from tyranny once we open anything into any of these shall nots.
Only if, see, why did the government, why did their founding government separate the powers? They separated the powers because they knew days like this could come. They know that inside every human being is really, unfortunately, greed at one level or another. And they knew that people live in a demonic world, and they saw throughout history what happened. So they thought the only way to really guarantee, or have the best way to guarantee freedom, is to empower each individual to have sovereignty. And each individual's rights not come from man, but to come from God, from a higher power. They did that so man can't take it away. So shall not be infringed. Also, there's a filtration system. Once again, it's us. Any of these laws that are put in, let's just do a hypothetical, an executive order. No one's allowed to have more than 200 rounds of ammunition. Let's just say it's that. And people go nuts. I'd be very upset. Would people abide by it? No, it would not. It's just like what's going on with right now. We technically could have millions of people that are felons with the arm brace, right?
They are felons. Actually, technically, the ATF has said it's illegal.
Well, it's illegal. They're saying it's illegal,
right.
But does it pass the constitutional test?
Nope.
The unfortunate thing, folks, and fortunate, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Freedom, it does not come easy. Freedom doesn't mean there's no victims. Even Jesus Christ said, once you say you're a Christian, once you follow me, you will be hated. You'll be a target. And they hated me first. And now they're going to hate you. Well, who? Who hates you? The demonic people. The people that are walking around that seem they're like you, but they believe that you don't have sovereignty. They believe that they have power over you. They believe that they're a dictator, and they're going to dictate to you how you're going to live your life, and the things that you can have, the things that you can drive, the things that you can eat, the things where you can go. Social credit scoring, digital currency, all that stuff is designed for you to lose your sovereignty. How do you fix it? You fix it by getting engaged. The answer is never going to change about the job that we have as citizens. So if these people pass laws and now there's a victim, for instance, Trump is a victim right now. His plenary power is being questioned. Does the President of the United States have the power? Because remember, he represents us. In the separation of powers, his office, his position is us. Okay, he's representing us. He's a private citizen that's over the military, for example, right? The Supreme Court is going to be the one who's going to decide this. And the Supreme Court is not the last gasp, by the way. Let's say the Supreme Court agreed. Well, you could go back to the House, and if 2/3 of Congress say, hey, I believe that what the Supreme Court said is wrong, they can quash that. So who are all these people? These are all elected officials. Every single one of them are elected officials, or they're appointed in the Supreme Court case, for example, in Supreme Court justices, by who? Elected officials that filter through who? We the people, through the representative republic, not democracy. So do I worry about if Obama said you can only have 200 rounds? Yeah, I worried that he went through the filter system and he was able to become an elected official in a country that the supermajority of people don't believe that should happen, but yet he's going to do it anyway because he has an allegiance to something else, not you and I. I believe in the filtration of this country. I believe, still to date, but it's getting weaker and weaker, that once it gets to the Supreme Court, after there's victims, it will be quashed. So, Eric, it all comes down to what are the citizens of the United States of America doing to defend themselves against tyranny? Because the final thing is you go to war. The final thing is revolution. And our founders had some pretty, there was a few founders that believed that revolutions had to happen periodically to kind of cleanse the blood of America. And, it'll be interesting if that's true or not. But we haven't had a revolution since, the Civil War in this country. But there sure feels like there's one brewing now. You've got something pulled up, Eric. What do you got?
Well, Declaration of Independence. So the justification that the colonies were given to England, the king, was you are a tyrannical dictator and you are suppressing our rights from God. So they told the king their justification that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, preventing life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute a new government. And I think my question for the show is we have two choices, and I'll see if you agree or disagree. We either have to vote out rhinos and the people who hate our country and get just people in to function under the Constitution, or we have to just start over. Because this government is corrupt with the people in place right now, and the Constitution has no value to those people. And no reasonable person wants to have a war with guns against the government, but I think it's we, the people, that have to institute the recreation of our system underneath the parameters of the Constitution, because we can't fix this. It's sick right now. So do you think allowing these corrupt people to modify or to put amendments inside the amendments can be tolerated anymore? I mean, look at the abuses that they've allowed to do by violating the First, the Second, the Fourth, and the 14th Amendment. I mean,
The short answer is yes. What are you talking about, Craig? What are you saying?
That's why I asked.
If the answer is no, then it is over.
Right.
If the answer is that the system can't take this type of pressure and the system can't take this type of lack of focus by the American citizen, if the system is set up that it's okay, it's over, let's just all grab our muskets and gather the troops and circle the wagons and go to your small town and defend yourself against the oppressive government. Well, no, I don't think that's where we're at all. I think our founders were geniuses. They're being shown to be more genius all the time. There's a constitutional convention going on right now that they're trying to make a constitutional convention. There's stuff going on today that there are people that are using the power of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights to help us. But the average American needs to understand that there's a lot of good news. You go to AmericaICan.com, and what we're building here in the show and on the network is about bringing us together. The power that we have united. But yes, the answer would be if we didn't have that. If we didn't have the ability while we're weathering this storm and while we're walking through the fire, if we didn't have the ability to team up and push back and to regulate what the government's doing to us, well, then I was Eric go, yeah, I think we got to get the muskets out. But I don't think we're there. I think where we're at is the average American now is now feeling pain. And that pain is waking them up. And they're going, whoa, what's going on? But there's very poor shepherds out there. Go back to what Steve Berger talked about earlier. We played that clip coming out of the break. Demonic times, weaknesses of churches, weaknesses of the leaders that are out there, weaknesses in government. These we've been infiltrated. But look, we're the elixir, folks. We're the exterminator. We can get rid of these roaches that are living in our home. We don't burn the house down. Okay. you could see what's happening with the Constitution. When you look at the Fourth Amendment, I guess in the 14th Amendment, specifically the Fourth Amendment, Black Lives Matter. No, First Amendment, Black Lives Matter, peacefully congregate. They're not peacefully congregating, and the law wasn't there. The law did not protect you and I. That's tyranny. If you're living in downtown Seattle, and they had the little city of Chad there, and you were a business owner, and you paid your taxes, and you have your county sheriff, you have your police department, and you have the FBI, you have every city, every state has an FBI station there, and your building was allowed to be burned down. That's tyranny. That is an absolute misrepresentation of not misrepresentation, it's an actual failure of the people that you voted into office that swore to uphold the Constitution, foreign and domestic. Well, that was a domestic terrorism against your small business, and they were allowed to burn it down, and they didn't stop them. And they were allowed to stay there for a very long time. So, Eric, those are the things, and that happens in very liberal cities. It didn't happen in small town America, because small town America would defend itself, and they have sheriffs there still today, the majority of them, that will uphold. You're not going to do it. You're not going to mug a lady in a small town America in Oklahoma or in Tennessee or in small town Texas. You're not going to go mug a lady at a light and people are just going to stand around and watch. No, they're not. They're armed citizens that know how to use their weapons, and they're going to defend the weakest among them, because the police can't be there all the time. But of course, with the Chad situation, you have all of this plays right into your question. When you have a situation where you have when you look at COVID and the constitutional failures of our governments, from local city mayors all the way to the federal government, allowing the government to infringe on our constitutional rights. These places, they could go out, the tyrannical people, the people who want democracy, save democracy, and we're not a democracy, we're a representative republic. Democracies lead to exactly what you saw going through COVID and Black Lives Matter, Antifa. These things, that is exactly what democracy brings you, mob rule. So what do you do about it? You get engaged. You replace the mayors. But here's the good news. Look at the lipness test we went through. You see what they did. You see how they acted. You saw the rules that they put in place. You saw how they broke your constitutional rights. They dictated that you could not praise the Lord and do worship. People weren't allowed to go pray. They couldn't pray for healing. They had to wait for Fauci. Man. Okay, that's the fallen world. That's the demonic times. He was God. Fauci and his band of cohorts, murderers, became God. Churches had to bend a knee to the all great Fauci and the all great government leaders that said, no, we are the ones that are going to fix this. No. That is not how it's supposed to be. And now you know. The next time something comes, you're going to stand up. The next time they try to say that you're going to stay in your house, you're going to wear a mask, you're going to take the shot, you're going to, and we're going to tell you what you're going to do, and then you're going to do it, or else. You saw what happened in Australia. God, they gave up their guns in the 90s. How sad. Folks, there is no excuse to put up with this anymore. We have been awoken. The great woke is the American citizen, folks. The great woke is you and I, not this paper dragon, this paper champion that they're saying is the woke crowd. No, folks. You go back to a reference, Torah. We got about 40 seconds left. There's a movie called Torah, and it's based off December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor is bombed. And they're all cheering, and they're all excited, and they're on their boats. Yeah, look what happened. This is the Japanese cheering, and one of their leaders was angry at them and said, basically, shut up. I fear that we have now awoken a sleeping giant, folks. That's you and I, folks. Awoken a sleeping giant. We're coming, folks. We're going to do it together. We will succeed. I'm Craig Bushon. Go to CraigBushonShow.com and AmericaICan.com. Thank you, Eric. Have a blessed rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Keep up the great work, Craig, and congratulations again. God bless you.